How would you react if someone enabled you to have all your personal and professional desires come to pass? Would you be constantly thanking them? Would you fear them, thinking if they helped you get these things, they could take them all away? Or would you secretly despise them because you recognize the failures in your own life? King Jeroboam had to decide how he would react to what God had done for him. Stay tuned to find out his choice. Hello, this is Lynn Watkins, and welcome to our series on the book of Hosea. Today we talk about King Jeroboam, the king with the selfish heart. Now Jeroboam, who became known as Jeroboam the First of the northern kingdom of Israel, was the leader of the original rebellion against David's grandson, and he lived approximately 1000 to 920 BC. Jeroboam, a descendant of one of the sons of Joseph, who had saved Egypt and saved the Hebrew people. Jeroboam was a gifted person, very popular, and he was a great organizer, yet he was selfish, and he did not really care about the people he claimed to want to help. According to Jewish tradition, the force that drove all his actions, indeed his life, was not a desire to better the Israeli people that trusted him, but it was his lust for power. And his self-motivated choices would eventually lead to the destruction of the northern kingdom. How did this happen? Well, let's look at 1 Kings 11. This is God talking to Jeroboam.
I will take you, and you shall reign according to all that your soul desires, and shall be king over Israel. It shall be, if you listen to all that I command you, and will walk in my ways, and do that which is right in my eyes, to keep my statutes and commandments, as David my servant did, then I will be with you, and will build you a sure house, as I did for David, and I will give Israel to you.
Notice the four conditions that God laid down for Jeroboam. Jeroboam was to listen to all God's commands, walk in God's ways, do what is right in God's eyes, and keep God's statutes and commandments. And notice as Jeroboam would do this, that God promised not only to make him king, but to establish Jeroboam and his families as dynastic kings over the new northern kingdom. All Jeroboam had to do really was to obey the Lord. After his ascension to the throne of the upstart northern kingdom of Israel, Jeroboam began to fret. He fretted over the temple's significance. Jeroboam feared that if the Hebrews continued their visits to Jerusalem, they would eventually forget their grievances and want to reunite with their southern brethren.
And Jeroboam said in his heart, now with the pilgrim festival approaching, the kingdom is in danger of returning to the house of David. If the people go up to bring sacrifices in the house of God at Jerusalem, then the heart of this people will turn back to their master, to Rehoboam, king of Judah, and they shall kill me and go back to Rehoboam, king of Judah.
You see, in his heart, Jeroboam did not trust God, although it was God who had made him king over the 10 northern tribes. He chose deliberately to ignore God's prophetic word to him and work to establish the kingdom by his own cunning. He leaned on his own understanding. Now, all Jews were commanded by God to make 3 pilgrimages yearly to the temple in order to give thanks to God. But Jeroboam knew that, logically speaking, if his new kingdom were to survive and thrive, he had to undermine the significance of the temple, because it was in Jerusalem, the capital of Judah. So he chose to deliberately block the people from obeying God's commands. First, he forbid the Jews under his control to go to Jerusalem. Second, he enforced his decree by mobilizing the military and placing armed guards along the border. Third, he also reintroduced calf worship to cultic centers in the city of Dan and in the city of Bethel, which now lay inside his territory. idolatry. Now, why did Jeroboam introduce calf worship? Well, once Jeroboam blocked his kingdom from worshiping Yahweh in the temple in Jerusalem, he had to find a substitute. The Hebrew people had been exposed to calf worship while they lived in Egypt, and they had sinned with the golden calf at Mount Sinai during the time that they were with Moses at Mount Sinai. Jeroboam knew the people had a desire to have a concrete image to worship. They were not interested in worshiping God in spirit or in truth. So Jeroboam exploited that desire and introduced the worship of two golden calves situated in the cities that I just mentioned. The calves symbolized Israel's independence from Judah, but it was also a symbol of their rebellion against God, which proved eventually to be a terrible choice. And in addition to those golden calves, Jeroboam established his own priesthood and his own religious festivals. His desire was to create a substitute for temple worship that mimicked the worship of Yahweh, the true God of Israel. Jeroboam's idea was a poor substitute for true worship. You see, this new form of worship contained the leaven of idolatry and violated the first commandment. And as Paul wrote in Galatians 5:9, a little yeast grows through the entire lump. Using the two golden calves as false representations of Yahweh, the people of Israel became desensitized to the perversion of truth. All subsequent monarchs of the kingdom of Israel would follow Jeroboam's lead. Not one of the kings was devoted to Yahweh. Like Jeroboam, they sought to reign according to all that their soul desired, not as God had commanded. You see, if we depart from the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, it becomes easier and easier to swallow a lie. Gradually, the people of the northern kingdom began mixing the worship of Yahweh with other gods. Apparently, Jeroboam allowed the importation, or perhaps the continual existence, of non-Jewish deities like Baal, Ashtaroth, and other Phoenician gods. And really, anything that would distract the people of the northern kingdom from the worship of Yahweh and the desire to go to Jerusalem, to be in the temple. In a short time, most of the people in the northern kingdom became basically polytheistic in their outlook and behavior. And eventually everything that the various leaders from Samuel's time until the breakup of the United Kingdom, everything that Samuel and those that followed him had done to eradicate idolatry from the Jewish people was undone by Jeroboam and the latter kings. You see, it is much easier to destroy than to build. Truth can sometimes be difficult to follow. God's ways are not man's ways. God's ways cut against our selfishness and our fleshly behavior. And it is at times to slide into idolatry, to go with general opinion, than it is to stand strong for God. This syncretism made the official acceptance of Baal worship in Israel much easier to follow, as we shall see in our next lesson. Thanks for listening. I look to hear what you think about this session. Please leave your comments below. And if you think this instruction would be helpful for someone else, please share this video with them. God bless you and goodbye.